All right, we're continuing our talk here on the metal cutoff saw or metal chop saw. And now we're going to talk about how to properly mount your stock and set this machine up for use. So first thing we're going to take a look at is we don't assume anything with the machines that we use. We always check first before using it. And I want to make some nice square cuts. This thing looks like it's set up square, but I'm not sure. I'm going to use a small square to check to see that this back fence here is truly square to the blade. So I'll make some space for myself here and place the square against the back fence, drop that off, drop the saw down, and then just slowly touch up against the blade. And I am noticing right now actually that this is not square. You want to push gently. If you push really hard, you'll just bend the blade, and it will sort of bend that blade into position and making it look like it's square. You just touch down gently. This thing is not square, so in order to make this square, you should be able to grab this tool here, this wrench, and you loosen off both of these bolts here on the back fence, and that should free this up to move. I'm going to actually clamp this square in. I find it's nice to place the square here and just get that square sort of just held somewhat. I'm going to reference against the blade, and I'm going to just clamp. Once it's tight to the blade, I'm going to start clamping in, and I can make these adjustments and sort of adjust the back fence with it slightly clamped and holding, and there. I feel that that is now square for me. I'll lift the saw out of the way, and I will gently tighten the screw closest to me, the bolt that's closest, and then gently tighten the back one. Kind of like alternate here, just snugging down a bit, and then finish it up by tightening them right up. If you do it one right away, you might actually twist. This whole entire clamp twists and you changed your angle. So, just snug them up gently until you've worked them in, and then tighten them up. Place the wrench back where it belongs. And let's bring this blade back down and just check that we didn't tighten so hard that we moved it. That looks like it's completely square to me still, so I was successful. Next thing we're going to do is mount some material. First one we're going to mount is just some regular flat bar. We're going to avoid placing it flat this way, because if we do that, it is only catching at the bottom heel of this clamp, and there's always that likelihood of something twisting and popping out of place while we're cutting it. So instead, we're going to plant this vertically. And there we go. That is how I would prefer to see people mounting their flat bar, vertically like that. Okay? Next piece, we are going to mount some small round bar. And the problem with anything that is really short is if you take a look in here, you will see that the bottom heel is touching and the top is not, doesn't have anything to clamp on. So the top of this clamp starts to sort of go in on this harsh angle here, and it's not really clamping, it's just bending the machine. So this is not a secure way to mount your material. So what we do instead is we place another piece on top, and what that's going to do is cause it to be sandwiched in there, and you get that even clamping pressure at the top and the bottom of your project. That's the way you would mount something that sits really low and short. Make sure that the top piece is not going to get cut by the actual blade. It's just there for support. Okay, carrying on. Sometimes we get pieces that are short in its length instead of its height. So this here is a piece that I want to cut, and if I place this in here to make this cut, the clamp might actually start to bite on the material, but it's not closing here. It's closing up here, and it's not putting its clamping force where we want. So that's not good. That's bending the machine, and it's not offering a very good clamping force. So what we do is we open this up, and we place a small piece of the same material in with it. So now when we're making this sort of a mount here, we have the same sort of similar sandwiching effect happening, and we're applying equal pressure on both sides, and it's really biting now. This thing's not moving whatsoever. So that is how you would mount something that is a short piece, by adding something on the left-hand side here to make sure that you're distributing your clamping pressure evenly. All right. Next, we have angle iron. Angle iron's kind of awkward because if you mount it this way, we have that same problem where the clamp is kind of torquing there, and you also run the risk of something sort of kicking up, especially if you run it this way. This is actually quite bad, quite dangerous, because it has a tendency to kick up this way during the cut. If your material moves during a cut, you can actually basically put some torque or some stress on that blade, and you can cause the blade to snap and explode. So we don't want any movement of our metal. The way to make this cut would be either to make this cut like this on an angle here, okay? Push that against there, and now it can't move in any direction. Or we would place it like a tent here, that way. The thing I don't like about that, I mean, this is very stable, but what I don't like is we have that same problem where the clamp is tilting. So you already know what I'm about to do. I'm about to take another piece of material, place that on top, and now we're back to that. I actually place it this way here. There we go. Another piece of material to help to sandwich the parts, okay? And now we'll grab the piece that we're actually cutting. It's as stable as it can possibly be. So that basically, those are all the different things you need to consider when you're clamping material in here. The ultimate goal is to make sure that none of your material has a chance to move during the cut, because that would result potentially in a blade breaking, exploding, shattering, which could seriously hurt you. One of the things that I failed to mention in my last video about mounting your materials is whenever we have to mount a long piece of material or a full length piece of material, we want to support both sides of this cut. So on the left hand side here, I've got this roller stand that's here, and I'm going to set the height of this roller stand so that my material sits perfectly flat along this table. I can take a look, and I'm dead flat on the table. It shouldn't be set so low that you're high off the table on this side, and it shouldn't be set so high that you're high off the table here. So if you got this thing set up right, it's laying dead flat on your table. And also during this cut, once I blast through this piece that's hanging out here is going to want to fall. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to do a left-hand cut and hold my piece. That's one option. Or I can ask one of my friends to come by with hearing protection and all the personal protective equipment on, same that I'm wearing, and my friend can help hold the material. If you're going to have a piece like this fall down, then at least take the time to make sure that you've managed any risk of where it's falling. There's nobody that's going to get hurt if that falls down to the ground. There's nobody walking around who's going to slip or trip on this thing. If you're going to make a cut that falls, then at least take that extra time to make sure it's safe.